If you've been following along, you already know that your first job this summer isn't to plan everything. It's to find your first domino, one strong unit built well that creates momentum for everything else. But here's the question I know is still sitting in the back of your mind. What if I don't have anything to build from? No textbook, no provided materials, no scope and sequence, no curriculum. Just a list of standards and a course name on your schedule. If that's your reality, this episode is for you. Because today I want to talk about something that doesn't get named enough in conversations about teacher planning. The gap between having standards and having structure. They are not the same. And for elective teachers, CTE teachers, and multiple prep teachers building courses mostly from scratch, that gap is where so much of the overwhelm lives. Welcome to the Secondary Teacher Podcast, the podcast for middle and high school teachers juggling multiple preps to get the strategies to reduce overwhelm so that you don't have to choose between being an effective teacher and prioritizing important relationships. I'm your host, Kristen Masick, a 10-year high school engineering teacher, former middle school assistant principal, and teacher coach. Every week, we will discuss strategies, systems, and time-saving tips to help you not only survive but thrive as a multiple prep teacher. A few years ago, I was sitting in a meeting with a district level administrator, someone who oversaw curriculum. And at some point in the conversation, she made a comment that stopped me cold. She said something along the lines of, "Our teachers aren't curriculum writers. They're teachers." She said it in the context of teachers wanting to purchase things from teachers pay teachers. The implication being, why are teachers out there buying curriculum? They should be teaching, not writing. And I understood what she meant. In theory, she was right. Teachers shouldn't be having to be curriculum writers. That's a different job, a different skill set, a different workload entirely. But here's what that comment missed. The district wasn't buying curriculum for these teachers either. So what exactly did she think was happening? Elective teachers and CTE teachers were showing up to classrooms with a list full of standards, no textbook, no provided materials, no roadmap, and being expected to teach anyway. And when they spent their own money on TPT to fill the gap, they were quietly judged for it. That comment has stayed with me ever since because it represents a blind spot I've seen at the administrative level across districts everywhere. The assumption that if a teacher has standards, they have what they need. They don't. Not even close. I taught 18 different courses over my career. At one point, one single school year, I had 9 unique preps. And out of all those classes, only 2 ever came with any kind of curriculum. One of them was a Project Lead the Way course, and I didn't get access to that curriculum by just being assigned the class. I had to go through a 2-week summer training, going through every lesson, every activity, every assessment, and become certified to teach it before I was handed the materials. I remember opening that curriculum and thinking, so this is what structure looks like. And here's the honest truth. The content itself wasn't anything revolutionary. It was honestly kind of dry in places. No high school student was going to walk in thinking this was the most exciting thing they'd ever seen. But the structure was there. The pacing was there. The sequencing was there. The vocabulary progression was there. The lesson flow was there. And for the first time in years, I had room to actually teach. Not invent, not build, not reverse engineer a skeleton from scratch every single week. Just teach. And that's when it hit me. I had been spending so much mental energy creating the framework of my courses that I barely had capacity left to refine my actual instruction. I thought being a good teacher meant constantly creating new things, but what I actually needed was structure I could teach from. Those are 2 very different things. Standards are not curriculum. They tell you what to teach. They do not tell you how to sequence it, how to pace it, how to build it into something a real student can actually move through successfully. And elective teachers are doing that translation work every single day, usually alone, usually without recognition, and almost always on top of their actual teaching. That's not a planning problem. That's 2 jobs. I want to say something that I think a lot of secondary teachers need to hear out loud. A lot of what gets called teacher burnout isn't actually about teaching. It's about curriculum development. It's the mental load of constantly building the structure of a course while simultaneously delivering it to the students. Those are genuinely separate jobs, and when one person is doing both without the time, training, or resources that curriculum development actually requires, exhaustion is not a character flaw. It's a predictable outcome. And this is why the teacher workload for CTE teachers and elective teachers looks so different from what administrators often assume. It's not just lesson planning, it's sequencing standards into units that actually make sense, deciding what comes first and why, building assessments before you've taught the content, creating projects that are engaging and standards aligned, pacing a course you've never taught before, all while teaching 4 or 5 other preps at the same time. That's career and technical education and elective teaching in a lot of districts right now. And the first step to making it more sustainable isn't working harder. It's understanding what you're actually being asked to do, so you can start building systems that make it more manageable. So here's what I learned, both from finally having curriculum in my own classroom and from watching teachers build courses from scratch. The content is not the hard part. You know your subject. You know what's worth teaching. You know what students need. The hard part is the structure. The structure is what most secondary teacher strategies skip right over because they assume you already have it. So if you're staring at a list of standards right now, wondering what to do with them, here's where to start. Stop treating the standards list as a sequence. The order standards are listed is not always the order you should teach them. We talked about this in the last episode. Sometimes the first standard listed is the worst place to start with real students in a real classroom. Look at your standards and ask, what's the foundation? What concept does everything else build on? What would hook students early and create momentum? That's your sequence, not the numbered list. Separate the big rocks from the supporting standards. Not all standards carry equal weight. Some are foundational, the concepts students absolutely must understand for the rest of the course to make sense. Others support and extend those big ideas. If your course has an end of course exam, look at the question weighting by strand. That breakdown tells you exactly which standards the state considers most essential. Let that inform where you put your energy. If you don't have an EOC exam, ask yourself which standards would make the biggest difference if students really mastered them. Start there. Build a repeatable lesson structure before you build individual lessons. This is the move that changes everything for multiple prep teachers, because if every lesson you build looks completely different structure, different flow, different format, you are making hundreds of extra decisions every single week. But if your lessons follow the same basic shape, you make that structural decision once, and then you just fill in with content. That's what sustainable teacher planning actually looks like. It's not about having everything built before August. It's about having a structure that makes building faster every time you sit down to do it. I want to come back to that comment from the district administrator. Our teachers aren't curriculum writers, they're teachers. She wasn't wrong about what teachers should be, but until districts close the gap between what elective teachers and CT teachers are given and what they actually need, teachers will keep doing both jobs. And the most protective thing you can do in that reality is to stop trying to do curriculum development the hard way. Stop building everything from scratch every time. Stop treating every course like it needs a completely original lesson for every single day. Find your structure, build your repeatable framework, reuse what works. Because you're not failing at planning, you've just been asked to do curriculum design work without being given curriculum design systems. And that's exactly what this series is here to help you with. Next up, we're talking about one of the most common traps multiple prep teachers fall into when they finally sit down to plan: collecting resources instead of building something. If your Google Drive or Teachers Pay Teachers library is full of things you've downloaded and never used, that one's for you. If you want help turning your standards into an actual structure, not just a list of things to cover, grab the free secondary teacher planning calendar in the show notes and join the unit planning lab waitlist while you're there. It's built specifically for secondary teachers doing this kind of curriculum work without a roadmap. Finish something that makes tomorrow lighter. I'll see you next time.